Hello and welcome to the very first edition of Decision 2026. Between now and polling day, this program will be a space for informed, respectful and evidence-based conversations about the choices facing the country. You'll hear from the government, the opposition, independent voices and experts. Our role is not to tell you what to think or who to vote for. Our role is to examine the facts, test ideas, explore policies, and provide the context that helps you make your own decisions. But before we speak to those who want to lead the Gambia, we need to understand the country they want to lead. What country will Gambians be voting in this December? What does our political landscape look like? What are the biggest issues facing the country? What choices are before the electorate? And what visions are competing in the Gambia's future? Those are the questions that will frame Decision 2026. And today, we begin the conversation. I am Mamadou Mbodj, and I'm joined on the panel who's going to help us map out the political landscape. So I will begin on my immediate right. We have Aissatou Keita. She's the president of Gambia Press Union. She represents the institution most directly affected by questions of media freedom and press regulation, and gives us an informed, independent check on how this election will be covered, not just contested. Sitting next on Aissatou's right, well, he really needs no introduction. Adedarami, head of news and current affairs, QTV. He has spent years overseeing this network's coverage of Gambian politics and brings one of the widest institutional views of this country's news cycle of anyone in this studio. Now, to my immediate left, I've got Aliou Cissé, senior QTV reporter and host of our flagship State of Affairs. He brings the reporter's instinct for what actually is happening on the ground and a weekly discipline of examining the country's affairs on his own program. And sitting on his left, we've got Mr. Ibrahim Adabo. Actually, should I say welcome? Just recently joined QTV. He's an experienced reporter on issues, governance, accountability, and transitional justice and the like. So that's the panel, the quintet. So who's going to build this political map setting the scene? But before we do that, I think we should talk to head of QTV News. Why does QTV believe this program is necessary?
I think we have a space where we have 24 registered political parties. I think everybody's agreed that this will be one of the most keenly contested elections in the country's history. And so the emphasis on this program is not about campaigning for candidates or bringing down candidates, but actually, without sounding rather kind of highfalutin, it's about helping citizens make informed decisions and informed choices before they vote. And so I would say when we were building this program, we had certain editorial principles. Fairness, that every political actor who comes on here should be treated equally and judged by the same rules. And fairness is brother, impartiality, that journalists here will not be promoting or opposing parties or candidates. We might challenge them, but it's not about promoting or opposing them. And then rigor. If people want the populace to vote for them, they have to be prepared for their claims to be examined by people like us or people on this panel. And there needs to be some rigor applied to that. And we will challenge facts, not with heated discussions, but with evidence and with data. And I think that's some of the things that guided us into actually deciding to come up with this program.
That's it. Unless anybody wants to add something there, but it seemed pretty comprehensive to me. So, Aliou, you want to say something there?
Yeah, I don't think I have much to say. I think Mr. has actually given us the background as to the reason behind coming up with such a program. I mean, knowing the fact that this year's election is fast approaching, and it's good that we have these kind of platforms where we can, I mean, continue to set the agenda, because it's important. The media has a huge role in setting the agenda. It's good that we have such a platform where we can invite aspiring candidates and, of course, political actors to come and let's discuss issues around the election and what it means for this country.
Yeah, if I jump in again just quickly, because I think when we were having the discussion, Mr. Mboj, I think we decided that this program will distinguish and make the point that elections are not just about people competing against each other. No, there are opportunities for the citizens to actually have a chance to hear what people have to say, who claim that they're going to be, and to actually make decisions on the competing visions for the country. And I think
that's it. So can I have an introduction?
Yeah, I think that's actually important. Thank you very much for having me, and it's actually going to be a pleasure to be part of these discussions that will actually lead everything that we are going to see from now moving on to the elections. It will give actually the citizens the opportunity to hear, but also get divergent perspective on where they will take cue on some of the things, especially what will drive change in the next 5 years. Because most of the time when we look at elections, people just look at the individuals that are actually participating in elections, but forget about the ideas and what would be coming after those people come into office. Yes, so I would not want to go in there because we'll be discussing this.
That's it. Just introductory remarks, Mr. Dawo.
Yeah, first I would say it's a pleasure to be here and to share a platform with all of you here. And although Asari is odd because she's the only female,
makes me unique.
Yeah, that makes her unique as well. And that shows also the uniqueness of the program as well, because it's one of a kind. Bringing people together to bring in expert ideas, also allow citizens to make informed decisions as to the choice that they should make in this year, which is very important. And I'm glad to be around.
Absolutely. So now let's begin with our first theme, the political landscape. Should I start from Ade, then it comes down. 9 years after the democratic transition, where is Gambian democracy today?
Yeah, I think the question we have to ask is that, is it maturing? How mature is the democracy? And I think the contestation will prove that. How will people compete against each other? Will they compete with ideas? Will they compete with personalities? And that will bring up, when we look at, since 2016 and then 2017 when the president came into power, what are the gains that we've had democratically? You could have a shopping list of them: greater political freedom, more independent media, more active civil society, like Gala and so on. We'll get into that, of course. And then competitive elections. Even if one party ends up getting a huge share of the vote, these are some of the things that will be tested. And also increased freedom of expression. That is part of it. And so anybody who, when you have a situation where you have an incumbent and somebody wanting to unseat an incumbent, they have to be able to promise better than what the status quo obtains. And that is going to be very much part of what's going to be driving this election and the campaign leading up to it.
Queuing from Ade, in terms of democratic gains, we've seen a lot. Ade has actually mentioned, and one of the things I'll also talk about is the independence of the judiciary as well, given how it actually has leverage to be able to preside without any political interference and all of those things. Well, yes, so most of this progress are quite significant, but when you look at these institutional gains, it doesn't reflect on what the ordinary citizens actually feel. Correct. It doesn't reflect on what citizens feel about what actually exists in this case, because now you see the gap that will exist between the institutional gains and what the ordinary citizens feel about in their daily lives in terms of what actually happened. So democracy, fine, but it has not yet really translated into what we call economic security. You look at, talk about reliable public services, or even the aspect of the Constitution.
I was going to say,
yes, that's the Constitution. The constitutional certainty too.
Yes, we will get to the Constitution.
Exactly. Like you said, I mean, I totally agree with you. As far as our democracy is concerned, I mean, we have seen significant progress since 2016. Like Mr. Ade said, I mean, we are now much more freer to express our views without any fear of being arrested overnight. And of course, as journalists who have been here before 2016, we know how the environment was at the time. Today, I mean, the media landscape is much more freer. People are coming in. There are so many media houses. However, like you said, I mean, we still have some unfinished business, particularly in terms of the constitutional reforms. And of course, even when it comes to the TRRC, we still have some unfinished business as far as, I mean, the TRRC implementation is concerned. So these are all some of the issues that are still pending. But overall, we will say yes,
there is
significant progress as far as our democracy is concerned.
Of course, I would agree that there are significant changes, just from what Ali has said. You know, but if you look at the Gambia from 2016 to now, you know, and you look at some of the statistics around our democracy, you will understand that yes, it is evolving, although there are a lot of things that we could improve on. But generally, there is civil liberty and media freedom in the country, and that is keyed from Transparency International moving the Gambia from 145, you know, in the order index to 98 in the Transparency Index. You know, I think that is something very significant. But also looking at media freedom as well, Reporters Without Borders at some point during before 2016 ranked Gambia at 145, and we are now 98. You know, in terms of media freedom. So those numbers translate that we have a democracy and it is improving, but still there is a lot to be done.
Absolutely. So now, with the change in mind, what would we say are the defining characteristics of the current political movement? Start with.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I think if people look at it holistically, they will be asking certain questions. The National Assembly, how effective is it in terms of scrutinizing government? The Electoral Commission, we still hear people making claims and allegations against the Electoral Commission and its independence. Auditor General, that's a whole, you know, and the role of the Auditor General, anti-corruption mechanisms. We've only just recently established Anti-Corruption Commission, hasn't really started working yet. And local government institutions, we saw what happened when they were faced the scrutiny of government Commission of Inquiry. You know, so all of these things actually, so even though we talk, there are serious challenges still across the spectrum, you know, that we really need to look at. And of course, one of the broadest issues is people will look at things and say, okay, regarding institutions, are they becoming stronger, as strong as they should be, or is it the leader who is stronger than the institutions? And those questions, I'm sure, have not yet been put to bed.
Yeah, so interestingly, so for me, I look at in a general perspective that we are still struggling to exit the gravitational pool of consolidated executive power. So when you talk about progress, yes, but unfinished business, which is absolute. So three things that actually define, when you look at that, define the correct political environment. One, you look at the legitimacy debate. So it's centered on whether a president who promised democratic reform should seek a third term under constitutional, a constitution he choose not to reform, so to say. So you also look at the generational shift as well, looking at the like of Tablif Bensouda with younger leaders trying to take up the political mandate as to how best to steer the affairs of politics in the country. Maybe look, which actually offers a vision, a different vision and vocabulary form of politics based on what we've actually seen before and what we are seeing now in terms of political establishment in the country. But also you look at the third fragmentation, we look at the political field has never been much more crowded like it's actually been before. It's going to be a very much contested one, so to say.
Absolutely. So that's. But let me. I'll push it here as well. You will come in. But again, overall, on the whole, do you think that our society, the political institutions, are healthy? The democratic institutions, are they healthy?
Yes, they are healthy. I mean, because like I should have just mentioned, you talk about the issue of the constitution. I mean, reforming the constitution. But we will all agree. Yes, I mean, this was democratically rejected in the parliament, that we need to accept. But also, when you look at the National Assembly, it's more active today than it was before
Mhm.
in terms of trying to hold the executive accountable.
Sure.
That we must accept. The IEC too as well. I mean, yes, like Mr. Ade said earlier on, yeah, there are some claims of voter fraud here and there, and even during elections there are some claims that are being made which are yet to be substantiated in court, because that's where they have to go and substantiate most of these claims. Sure. But like you said, most of these institutions, they are strong. They are doing their work, even though they still have much more to do.
Okay, Mr. Dabo, how do you see it?
Yeah, so I was going to say, let me connect it to what Aissatou said.
Yes.
You know, because in 2016 we promised a democratic reform, and as he said, before 2016 we had consolidated executive power, where Jammeh and his government would do certain things, you know, based on certain powers given to them by the Constitution, and promising that democratic reform. Now we are at a stage where the executive or the president, you know, could remove or could dismiss the Auditor General, you know, which also shows that there is too much executive powers in our country, which the president is trying to express at some point. But based on institutions also, that democratic reform we promised in 2016, we expect the National Assembly to uphold, you know, the same spirit. And if the same spirit was within the National Assembly, then the draft constitution in 2020 would have been
to come in here regarding the issue of the Attorney General, yes. Auditor General, yes. I mean, we will accept, yes, the President has, you know, taking decision to remove him, but what we have done at the Supreme Court shows that we have an independent judiciary. Because I dare not see under Jammeh or maybe in another government you have the Supreme Court overturning decision of the president.
That's quite sensible as
exactly.
well. The independence of the court. And I think the other day we spoke about that, you know, that the citizens have confidence in the judicial system now, that decisions of the government could be challenged by citizens, which is again that we have had.
Absolutely. But finally, and we must be done with the political landscape. This constitutional reform, rule of law, parliamentary oversight, institutional independence, how much would that contribute in the politicking, in the people's choices?
I think if you even use the word reform broadly, because as we were speaking, I jotted down two of the things that I think are still of concern to people: public sector reform and security sector reform. I don't think people think those have been settled, and I think that will come as part of the contestation come the election.
That's it.
So which is why I did mention, in as much as government will actually like to say there are reforms, yes, certain institutions will mention reform, but to ordinary citizens, it's not actually reflected in our daily lives. You've mentioned the security sector reform per se. Like that, for me, I would say there is nothing been done in terms of security sector reform, because based on what we've seen in the past and what people foresee in terms of security sector reform, what should happen, and what we see on the ground today, it's quite different. So you tend to ask how far with the reforms as promised in the exactly.
We cannot exhaust this one. We have to move on. The economy. Let's go to the economy. What is the real? No. We have to go to the economy. That's it. You may have another opportunity to say whatever you need to say. Okay, now the economy. We're getting all sorts of statistics, really. The economy has grown by, what, 6%? Something like
6%,
that, GDP and that like. But how are people feeling it? And how do we measure that? So we want it to be more evidence-based instead of the impressionistic stuff. So how do we measure?
When you ask me, I mean, the economy is going to be probably one of the defining issues as far as the election is concerned. Yes, I mean, when you read some of the reports from most of these international institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, I mean, like you said, they kind of tell you, okay, our economy is doing well. But, I mean, you speak to an ordinary Gambian, they see a different view. What they tell us about high cost of living and, of course, other stuff as far as the economy is concerned. So what they're trying to tell you is that the realities on the reports and what people are telling you are completely different. So where is the missing link now? For me, that's my issue.
That's it. So you can address it, and then we sort of try to move this on a bit. What economic indicators should voters be paying attention to, I wonder?
Well, you see, they don't pay any regard to what the IMF and the World Bank say. What they ask are these basic questions, and somebody needs to be able to answer that. Can I afford food? Can I pay my rent? Is my transport going to come down? Am I going to get a pay rise? These are the things that actually people will tell you about every day. They don't care about all the indicators, and most of the politicians, particularly the opposition, know that they won't, when they campaign, pay any attention to that either. They will try and address these concerns: food, work, rent, transport costs, and all those things. And they'll say, if we come in, those things will be better. That's how they're going to try and solve it.
Things that the voters need to put into consideration is you look at the real household income, so to say. You look at youth unemployment, because this is actually an underemployment which are actually drivers of migration, so to say, given what we are facing now. And also you look at the public death and physical scale, which is actually a challenge at the moment.
That's it. That actually brings me to my final question on this, really, the economic inheritance that whoever, even the incumbents, continue, but there are challenges that you're going to face. So what kind of economic inheritance would the next president face?
Yeah, so, but
especially put in the context of what you've just said.
Yeah, I think on the issue of the economy, we still have to understand that more than 53% of Gambians still live below the poverty line. You know, and then the cost of living, you know, is still relatively very high in the Gambia compared to our spending powers. You know, look at our earnings, you know, in relation to our cost of living, and then consumer prices are continuously increasing. So, and that makes the citizens to ask the questions, in fact, are all those numbers that we are seeing translating into our lives?
And for me, the issue is, I mean, it's not as if this problem is only, you know, peculiar to the Gambia. This is a global issue. So whoever comes in as next president, you will still face the challenges. Yes, in the Gambia, we might complain about high cost of living, but it's the same in other countries. You travel to other countries, people are complaining the same issue. High cost of fuel, high cost of living. So you understand that Gambia is not an island. We live within other countries, so it's more like we also depend on other countries for certain things. So whoever comes in as next president, be it Barrow, Continue, or someone else, the problems are still there. What remains to be seen is what means are you going to use to ensure you are able to address some of these challenges. But they'll be here.
That's it. And one would imagine that a major problem would be youth. So one wonders, how are young voters likely to shape the election?
Well, this is something that we're finding all across Africa, where the youth are the majority. And so among the questions that the youth are asking and that oppositions try to answer is that, yes, there might be economic growth, but is there inclusive growth? Does that trickle down to everybody? And in terms of job creation, they're not saying that government should create jobs, but has government genuinely created the enabling environment for jobs to be created? And, you know, and of course, the purchasing power. You know, the one thing I would take issue with is that since I've come here, the number of people I've known who've kind of migrated through the back way who had jobs tells me that it's not necessarily down to lack of jobs.
We'll get to
that. But so, you know, youth unemployment is huge. And of course, the questions leading to that is that, are the youth actually those who are without jobs? Have they been trained? Have they gone through an education system that prepared them for the workplace or not? And so what's the quality of the education? What's the relevance of it? What's the access to education that would actually mean that they are employable? Yeah, and so those are some of the things I think that need to be.
That's it. And I just want to come in here and then you can take it on from there. But perhaps one can say that when it comes to, for instance, education, we've seen the flurry of activity with the Minister of Higher Education, the scholarships and TED funds, they're doing all sorts. You look at the Minister of Basic Education as well, very active, very beehive-like, and skills centers. So you look at all of this, doesn't it give you sort of hope that at least there is some movement in it? It's just that perhaps things are difficult. It's a massive scale. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I mean, if you speak to so many young people, what they will tell you is that we are no more asking for campaign promises. We need something concrete. Yes, as you mentioned, the government is coming up with so many projects under the Minister of Education. You have the TVET, you have the skill centers and all that. But what do you do with those skills after they have acquired their skills? Imagine you go to a technical school and then you learn carpentry and then you open a carpentry shop. And then yet you're having a government that import, I can say 100% of their office furniture from outside. Where do this live? Where does this leave the young people who are with the skills to probably make a table for the Ministry of Youth and Sports? So these are some of the gaps that we should look into to be able to empower these young people. It's one thing to provide the skills. It's one thing to provide the environment, but how you empower them also is different.
Mr. Davo?
Yeah, so and in that situation, we say we young people are definitely looking for results, not just promises.
Yeah.
They are looking for concrete results. Policies that would add value to their lives. Not policies that will give them promises that the future will be better for you. And at this moment, I think young people in the Gambia are not waiting anymore. They're taking initiatives, by themselves. We've seen that from 2016 with participation, in fact, with Not Too Young to Run.
Yeah.
We've seen young people came up to say, no, we are not leaving older people to make decisions for us. In fact, we form the core of the population, because statistics tell us that more than 40% of our young people, of our population, is below 25 years. So it shows that a larger chunk of the population are young people.
And even in Parliament, you have so many young people.
And queuing from that, even in the aspect of young people and these elections, you look at those that voted in the 2016 election are 10 years older.
Yes.
Yes, so that's like those young people are still there. They're still waiting.
Yeah.
So now they're supposed to decide in this 2026 election. So now the question is, they're asking themselves, most will ask themselves, do I need to vote or do I not vote? Given the situations that actually still persist based on some of the promises that were made in the previous election, are they still solved or not? So all of these things are questions that need to be posed, like in terms of what young people are really looking forward to from their leaders.
So this one though, then we leave it very, very quickly. Expectations. Is it part of our job to manage expectations? Isn't it dangerous for a society as well? And when we look at the objective reality of our economy, of everything else, when I have certain expectations, that could be quite toxic for society when they are not met. Is it our job, our role as well to manage this?
But yes, it is our role to manage our expectation, but it is also the responsibility of politicians to be honest with the voters.
Yes.
Okay.
You cannot go out there because you want to become the next president, and then you promise to the essence, you even promise to bridge where there is no river, and that makes it a case. When you win, people they don't have the patience; they expect results immediately. And when you don't deliver within maybe first 6 months or first year, people start losing patience, and they're like, you are not delivering. Even though probably, the realities, like you said, does not allow you to do certain things. It's beyond you. But like they always say, in politics, when you are outside, what you perceive to be inside, when you get in, you start to face the reality. And you begin to wonder, wow, so this is the reality.
That's it. And sometimes perceptions are not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
And then just link it with our next segment here. What do you think would be the governance issues that would matter most to ordinary people? Because essentially what you touched on was governance. So let's move on from youth expectations and now the governance issues. What would be hot during this campaign?
Yeah, so I wanted to say the messaging, the kind of messaging we use during the campaign is very important in this situation, because some of those expectations are raised based on the messagings we have during the campaign. If you get to my people in Kiang and tell them that you want to build an airport for them, so that people, the Kiang diaspora, could fly into Kiang directly, so that is a promise that you might not fulfill. And then it might raise expectations and to a certain level that if they are not fulfilled, it becomes another problem. But there are a lot of issues that we could solve in this country. And I'm very sure that I'm happy that you raise issues of governance, because governance is a big problem that we need to look at here, especially when it comes to local government, because I'm telling a lot of people that for me there should be some sort of a strategic relationship between the central government and local government, so that policies that are made at central level could reflect the lives of the ordinary people. But if the local government authorities and the central government are always at scuffle or always at loggerhead, the impact now is going to be negative on the ordinary citizens. So
it's a structural issue.
So for me, I look at in the aspect of public service delivery that matters most when it comes to governance matters. You look at education, you look at health. So people want to see, we are paying taxes, but are those taxes used to actually address our needs as citizens? Can I get water? Can I electricity, so to say? I still, like my house, I still struggle to get water. Before I get water, it's around 2 a.m. So I'm asking, I'm always paying taxes, but how can I actually see the realities of the taxes that I'm paying on a monthly basis? So when you look at it generally, these are not partisan issues, but these are things that people actually expect. This is what I'm actually spending my money on, but then are these actually reflecting on the realities that are actually on the ground? So, and they are not the basic expectations of the people, but these are things that even those would-be electoral leaders should look into. And because these people will be looking at these issues in terms of who they are going to decide on to lead them in the December polls, in the December elections, so to say.
Yeah, because, I mean, for example, I come from a village where we've never seen electricity. Thanks to the current government, we have electricity. So certainly, these are some of the things that people expect from a government. And yes, many communities now in the provinces, they have electricity. Maybe Mr. Mboch was just born and saw electricity. I wasn't. So, I mean, these are some of the things that you expect from a government.
They're just basic expectations.
Exactly,
yeah.
I think governance...
Don't use me as an example.
I think so now that equality. So now
so that sort of segues into the next issue, really, which you can take up as well. Yeah, sure. This thing called development.
Yeah.
What has been our progress? Link the two.
I can link the two quite easily, because if you look at governance, for example, it's about how power is exercised, not just who holds it. And when it comes to development, people will look at things regarding the governance aspect of it, misuse of funds, how are procurements handled, are there conflicts of interest, is there transparency, is there accountability? And also regarding governance and development, if there is poor performance in delivery, are the people responsible for that, are they answerable to anybody? And if so, to whom? And when there are audit findings that expose things quite badly, are they acted upon? Are people prosecuted? Are people jailed? So if that impacts on whether we're going to get a school or a hospital in my village or in my region, then of course I give a damn. Are we going to get roads? And if not, is it due to poor governance? So development and governance, they do go hand in hand, and you in a way you can't separate the two, so all of those things. And so one of the things that people will look at, they talk about decentralization and so on, but they will say how really devolved is local government so that it is not dependent on central government. And then if it is devolved, can we on the local level hold our local authorities accountable? And those things matter, because that will directly impact the development in our particular region, town, city, whatever.
But that's interesting also. Maybe I'll ask you too. When you look on the ground, what's going on? How much is there any appetite for decentralization?
I think it's very important, but we really have to be very honest as far as the relationship between the central government and the local councils. Certainly, I mean, there are certain development that Mr. Ade, I don't expect it to come from the central government. Local government has a huge responsibility. There are certain roads you go within, maybe West Coast, Lower River Region, or even within the KMC. Those roads should be constructed by the council, not government. So I think that also is very key, that we make it very clear. But here we assume everything is central government. And the councils are collecting millions. We've seen what we had during the Commission of Inquiry.
Yeah, I would say there is a high appetite for decentralization. You know, if you get into the local government areas, you would see people continuously asking this question to the local government authorities. What happens to the 60%, you know, that you should plow back to the region as part of development from the taxes that, you know, you collect from us? You know, and as Ali said, always there are these questions that people within the regions are asking of their local government authorities in terms of certain amenities that they should enjoy within the societies. You know,
it's an interesting point, because what I was going to come in, it's kind of linked to what Ali was saying. If, for example, in local area we want to build a road, but the president says, no, I'll build it and I'll take all the credit for it, because now I can link you to your markets, I can link you to that. There's always that push and pull between the two, you know, central government
especially when they don't belong to the same
So,
party.
I wanted to even say the interference, how about the interference from central government in regards to what most of these local governments are actually doing, in as much as they are supposed to do these things, but then how much interference does government also have in the work of the local government?
And that's where strategic relationships between the central government and local government comes in as well.
So which means, which actually talks that there should be a divorce between political issues when it comes to development matters, because politics should actually be put aside, because now we are focusing.
I was going to say that can be quite dangerous, because if it is that you have a cozy relationship in local government with central government, it means then that the development is not evenly spread. You get better because you have a decent, a nice, you know, arrangement or a relationship with central government. It shouldn't be that. You know, it should be equally devolved across the nation.
That's it. And development is so important, otherwise it brings us to our next issue, migration. You know, one of the defining sort of social and economic issues. So here, I wonder, how should political parties address this?
With honesty, but people can go in and give a deeper meaning. But I would say,
that was the
first of all,
the
with
invitation.
honesty. And the reason I say with honesty is because it has become almost a kind of epidemic here. And as I said when I was responding to another matter, when I said to mention migration, since I've come here, I've known, and that's just not even a scientific thing, but at least 12 or 13 people who had decent jobs, who went on the so-called, what we call the back way here, the irregular migration route. And there are many others who went on it who had no jobs. So it's quite complex. But of course, people like to boil it down to simplicity, but it's not. It is a really, really complex one, as I said. Oh, we recently had the case of, you know, immigration officers who went for training and decided to abscond. I went, you know, I went, you know, in early 2020, I went with a 6-a-side team to Liverpool, and all of them had jobs, and 4 of them absconded. Only 2 came back with me, you know, and they won a competition here, a 6-a-side competition.
Yeah, so with a particular bank.
But I didn't want to mention the bank. But I was there as the journalist covering the story and doing a documentary about it. And we had to shelve it because, of course, that was quite embarrassing that 4 of them absconded on the day that Liverpool played Southampton, just by way. But, you know, on a more serious note, you know, migration is a very, very complex thing. And I get really angry when people try to simplify it down to say, oh, there aren't any jobs. It's a lot more complex than that. There's pressure on people because they've seen their neighbor's child go through this dangerous journey and succeed and send money, and they remit and they say, why are you not doing it? And so it puts pressure on people that otherwise they wouldn't take these dangerous journeys.
And you know, for most of these young people, the calculation has always been the risk of the journey is lower than the risk of actually staying, having no future in the country and all of those things. So looking at it, it might not just be brushed on the surface, but then you look at it deeply, why are people still migrating? And then you've mentioned the aspect of those immigration officers actually having the opportunity to travel but still left. Low wages becomes another question that you ask.
So this is it. So that old debate, isn't it? Is migration essentially an economic problem, governance problem, or just a generation that really has stopped believing in the country's future?
Yeah, because there's a push and pull factor attached to migration. So when you talk about the conditions within our country that push people to go out, you also need to look at the conditions there that are portrayed by other people there that also serve as a pull factor, you know, to some of our young people.
I think for me, it's not just about economic factor, an economic issue.
It is
I
beyond
think
that.
it's also about confidence. How confident are they that if they stay at home, they can get the opportunity to make a meaningful life here. And like you said, okay, family pressure, peer pressure, you're living in the same neighborhood, you hear, okay, your friend has gone successfully, he's in Italy or somewhere in the Europe and has started developing here. That alone can put pressure on you that you don't even want to stay.
And I think we need to draw a kind of line between when there was a change in the kind of migration. Mr. Mboj, Mohamed Jah and others, they migrated, they studied abroad and they came back. During the Jammeh era, at its height, I used to go to immigration offices in London and I would meet people from Sierra Leone who had claimed that they were Gambians, knowing that that would grant them stay in the UK. And so when people realized that it then completely changed the nature of the migration that happened from the Gambia. And it became an industry. You know, people became middlemen who could facilitate your journey either by the sea route or by the desert route. And those people make serious money. And then, you know, once people got to know that Momodu, who was my classmate, made it to Spain or Italy or wherever, you think, okay, I'll spend the $2,000 and I'll get, I mean, I was once called by GID because 12 Sierra Leoneans had been caught out of 37 people. And when I spoke to them, 4 of them said their brother, Gambian people, said their brother in France had sent $2,000 for each of them to go on that particular journey. And so you have that as well. So as I said, it's quite a complex thing. And we shouldn't ever try and simplify it. Yeah, because I don't have the answer.
Yes, it's true that, yes, you know, we have seen Gambians who have gone on this irregular migration and are doing a lot of fantastic job back home. But we also need to understand that things have changed now. 20 years ago, I mean, it would have taken you much more easier to get into Europe. But today, this is a global issue. Like, everyone is trying to see how best they can stop irregular migration. Because already, even the West, they are struggling to handle the number of irregular migrants.
And political parties in Europe are playing on that.
Exactly.
And winning votes.
And also things have changed in this country. Under Jammeh, anyone could have used Jammeh's name to get asylum or get papers in Europe. That's normal. You cannot, I don't know what excuse are you going to use seeking asylum. And that's why even people who have been in Europe for many years seeking asylum, now they're struggling because what excuse can you give
because
that I cannot go back home?
Keep increasing all the time. So at some point there was a statistics that says that more than 17% of the irregular migrants through the Italian route are Gambians.
The Gambian,
You know, and that is a high number
for a small country.
For a small country like the Gambia, and even now there are statistics that says that over 12,000 people attempt to leave the Gambia every year. And you look at our population of 2.6 million. You said, okay, why are people so desperate to leave?
So, which is why it's actually beyond economics. So, because the economic dimension is the one that is visible there, but it is actually beyond that. Like, so many other people.
Maybe we need to do a research.
No, but also,
there have been so many research about that.
It's not just a source. The Gambia is also a transit
point for most of these migrants.
From this original country that is in the Gambia. And when they go, they have no document. They can just claim, okay, because the boat is from the Gambia.
We've actually quite seen a lot of that.
But most of them are not Gambians.
Yeah, that's true.
Most of them are not Gambians.
So this is so complex. I'm going to go back to my original question. How are political parties really to address this? I mean, it's easier if you talk about trafficking. That is outright criminal. But the other bit, people who just come and they're doing it on their own volition. The backway thing. Apparently, there wasn't any law specifically dealing with the backway thing. So what do they do? Do we need the legislation? What do you do? How do you deal with this situation?
And that's why now there's a bill in Parliament, the immigration bill, which is trying to see how best they can create laws that can be able to address all these irregular migration of smugglers and traffickers. Because like you said, there was a lacuna in our law that didn't address all these issues.
So if to go to
now
your point,
the Parliament is trying to...
to go to Mboji's point, because he's trying to get us to answer this question, how would political parties...
I know.
So I think what they would do is that many of them, if they're sensible, they will say, we will create jobs. But you have to say to the youth, any youth who's watching this, if a politician says that to you, as we tried when we did the test, say to any politician who says that, tell us how you create just 100 jobs. Not 1,000, not 10,000, not 200,000, just 100 jobs. Convince me of what you're going to do to create 100 jobs. Those are the questions that the youth who are watching this don't get swept along by somebody because of their youth. Doesn't mean that they have a plan for you as a youth, okay? And so what political parties will say that we will introduce vocational training so that if you can't get employed by somebody else, you can start your own business. You can do something for yourself rather than us importing. I mean, let's not forget, it's only last year that we graduated our first cohort of mechanical engineers. First ever. We were importing them from everywhere. You know, those are the people who build our roads and bridges and everything else, you know. And you know, we then started graduating architects, you know, only since I've been here. You know, every year, lawyers and accountants outnumber, well, I wouldn't say even they outnumber engineers, because for the first 5 years I was here, no engineers graduated, okay? And so political parties will make these promises, but you have to ask them the question, how are you going to do it? Because some of them might say, we will see whether we can link with other ECOWAS countries, whether you can find jobs there, whether we can link with other countries, as we tried with Spain. Okay, so Spain tried to do that thing, and of course people absconded. You know, and that spoiled the whole thing. But those are some of the promises that they will say. And they'll also say about, you know, we have a very active diaspora who, let's look at it, they contribute about $1 billion, you know. For me, it's never made sense to me that a country that as small as the Gambia ranks 9th out of 54 countries in terms of the amount of money that is sent annually. That is mind-blowing. Seriously. You know, we send by both the regular and irregular routes about $1 billion a year to the Gambia. You know, so engage with the diaspora about seeing whether they want to invest in businesses.
Beyond remittances.
Beyond remittances. So they're not just a kind of ATM for the population.
But
that's
like more like a development
partner with
skills.
Because like you said, I mean, the issue of how has always been a difficult question for all these politicians. I remember during the last election, 2021, a particular candidate came and he was asked, I mean, how are you going to address the issue of youth unemployment? Instead of answering, he was telling us, I'm going to fence the border between Gambia and Senegal to stop from, you know, marijuana coming into the country. So these are difficult questions. But like you said, for me, Mr. Mboch, I mean, regarding your question, we must start to get more industries into this country. Government cannot create job for everyone.
Dangote's
Dangote
message.
is coming in.
That was his message the other day.
Exactly. Look at the university. How many people are graduating every year?
Absolutely. But we're gonna move on a bit now to the present. So now, what kind of election is this likely to be? We're looking forward now. We've laid the background. So given what we've said, what kind of election is it likely to be?
I believe it's going to be a keenly contested election because the terrain has changed. You know, the incumbent will look back and said, I've won over 53% of the votes in the previous election. You know, and then the opposition would say, okay, together we've got over 47%, you know, but we need to ensure that we effect that change. So how do they effect that change? That's where their campaigning comes. And the messaging, I will always say it is very important in this situation. The oppositions will say that we have promised, the government has promised reforms, and still there is an unfinished business, especially when it comes to the issue of the constitution, the issue of security sector reforms, you know, and then addressing issues of poverty within the country. But the government will also come with counterclaims to say, we've given you a lot during this time. You know, in fact, we created the social safety net project for poverty alleviation. You know, we've created a social protection secretariat, you know, and also there is a much more better civic space, you know, since 2016, you know, so some of those things might be the messages that the government might send. So I would say, yes, it's going to be a keenly contested election, but the opposition is so fragmented that there will be challenges.
Yes, we will come to that. We'll even talk about coalition politics, what happens there. But first, really, very, very quickly, constitutional reform. The draft constitution 2020, wasn't it, and 2024, both of them defeated. How much would that be, would it influence voter choice?
Even before we came here, I said that one of the battlegrounds will be for the opposition. They will talk about legitimacy of incumbency. You know, that an incumbent who came with a promise of reform, particularly of things like the constitution, signally failed to do so. And you hear, you know, there's no, again, we've had this debate about, you know, whether we have to have term limits. And I always remind Gambians that you can't have such short memories. It wasn't term limits that got rid of Yahya Jammeh. It was the ballot. So use that same if you want to get rid of somebody you don't want it there. But I think that's going to be and for me, it's kind of extra noise being made, because if you think you can't defeat somebody, then you start saying, oh, you know, stand down after 2 terms. But if you think you have the ideas that will sway the vote towards you, go to the public with your ideas. Don't say there has to be a 2-term limit or a 1-term limit, as I heard one person mention. What can you do in 1 term? So I think those will be some of the battlegrounds.
That's it. Just to move on the discussion, would ethnicity be an issue? Because recently we've heard, we've seen what was, you know, what was making the headlines. What do you think?
Sure.
In what way? In what way?
Politics is going to play a huge role in this whole election, because that's what we believe in. People tend to align to a political party, or because they already understand how we think, they try to use that to get what they want from us. I mean, we saw what happened in the last election, and even as we speak, people are trying to use that. I mean, people can even use their own supporters to attack a particular tribe, just to make that tribe look bad, not to vote for the other candidate. So sadly, it's happening, and then definitely
when you look at issues of ethnicity, it's actually very sensitive when you talk about these issues, and people move closer to it. And then the signs are already there, because now political parties will easily use that, even if they don't have any policies to give to people. They will easily use those things against voters, and then it could be, they can easily win the hearts of some of these electors who don't understand, who don't look at policies, but looking at the individuals and these ethnic groups, so to say.
It's a deliberate messaging
from
the politicians. I remember in 2021, on the eve of the election, a senior advisor close to the government said that the Fullers and Jollers should start parking, because if the opposition win, there will be no room for them in the country. That was deliberate messaging, you know, to ensure that those people don't vote for the opposition. But also, recently, we have seen senior political figures making claims leaning towards particular ethnicities, you know, or trying to see how they could get the votes from a particular ethnicity. You know, these are, I believe it will continue until the day of the election, and at some point, it could also be a deciding factor, because deliberately, messages towards ethnicity are getting very common from our politicians.
I think that's at the heart of why a lot of our politics is about personality.
Yes.
That was exactly going to be my next point. So how much of this is going to be an issues-led, issues-driven kind of politics, or personality-based, as it were?
And for me personally, if you ask me, especially when it comes to government, you are the sitting government, you are the one in power, you have so much that you claim to have achieved, I mean, during the past 9 years. I think for me, your focus will be more on telling people about your developments.
Your record.
Yes, your record.
Stand on your record.
Admit, okay, these are global challenges, these are limited just to the government, these are challenges we face. But not just about, like you said, personality, Mr. Mbojis, Mr. Adedat. I mean, you have a lot of different as far as your development are concerned.
Interestingly, Ali, from that, I've seen the launch of a manifesto by the government, but I still find it difficult to see how best are they working to sell that particular manifesto. So most of us don't even understand what it actually truly is. For after the launch, I think that was where everything stopped. What type of efforts are they doing to actually ensure that? Because they already have the upper hand, they have the advantage. Because when you look at incumbency, it's more like they have the structural advantage. Everything the government can actually point out, yes, they have the resources, the real changes, achievements that it actually done. But then with all of those things, they've moved away from talking about some of the achievements that they've done, which people can actually point out, this is actually proof of it. But to looking at attacking personalities, which actually adds up to the baggage that the government already have, which would make it much more difficult for people to be able to understand what perspective or dimension that the incumbency will be driving at.
That is the very reason we have this platform. Then we will go and do these things and come and explain it to people, which actually it segues into my next point quite neatly. The role of debates and media coverage in this election. Mr. Darame, then we come this way.
Because we're here, and we've said that, you know, moving forward, this platform will give people the chance to debate, to contest their ideas, to have their ideas challenged. And I think that will be something that's new and different, really, because if we look at it, we're starting this now. The election is in December. Between now and December, we hope to have had everybody who's anybody who says, I want your vote, to come here, justify, and debate with us. You know, and that's why we're making the point that the same questions we ask you, the same tough questions we ask you, we will ask the next person and the next person and the next person. Don't take it personal, because, you know, I've been involved in stuff recently where I asked certain questions and people took it personal, and one person even threatened me, and I just laughed because, you know, it's not about that. It's about asking difficult questions of everybody. And yes, Mr. Mboj, we want it to be about the battle of ideas, not the battle of personalities. We have to get away from that, and that's why we're trying to encourage politicians to get away from personal insults and so on. Somebody says, you know, when you have elections when it's about contestation, it immediately tells you that you are coming from opposing views. You are opponents. But it doesn't mean, if you really are serious, convince me with your ideas, not with the fact that you can insult somebody who is of another tribe or of different ethnicity to mine, and then you think, oh, because of that, I'm going to vote for you. No, that should not be it. We have to get them to debate their ideas, and we have to expose those who it's just all fluff and puff, and there's no substance behind it. And we do that by saying, show me the data.
And absolutely, that will determine the coalition dynamics that's about to emerge. Now, let's talk about coalition politics. What do we see around? I understand that we have a few coalition talks, so you just don't have one. How does it look like?
I think for me, before we get into the coalition, I just want to add something to what Mr. Ada just mentioned. I mean, earlier on you asked about the issue of ethnicity and all those things, tribalism and whatnot. And you asked about the role of the media coverage and debate.
Yes.
I think the media has a huge responsibility to play as far as this election is concerned. We shouldn't be seen to be amplifying these tribal arguments here and there. I mean, if you call a particular candidate to a program, for God heaven's sake, focus on policies and programs, and then not about asking certain questions that might lead the person to go into tribalism and all those things. Because it doesn't help. It doesn't help at the end of the day. But like you said, it is important that as a media, we try as much as possible to give all candidates the equal opportunity to come and defend their policies and programs. It is up to them. It is not for us to defend what they want to do. It's for them to come and say, you know what, I'm here to defend what we have done. If Mr. S come and said, you haven't done anything, you have the same opportunity. Come here and defend it. That's all we can do. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we don't have monopoly of information. We cannot control it. There's the alternative media out there. You have the social media and all those things. So like Mr. Mboj rightly mentioned, come here and defend yourself. Face Mr. Mboj and face his tough questions.
That's it.
I don't want to say something about media coverage in presence of a GPU president.
Well, we can still listen. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I know it will encourage a broader citizen participatory in the election process. But also, I know in a certain way it will help the citizen to make informed choices in terms of election. But coming to your question about coalition.
Yes, and let me just tell Madam President, we have our rights.
We have our rights. That's a good one. We have our rights.
Exactly.
Yes, but about the coalition building, I think there is a dangerous precedent that is set already. You know, because you're seeing now parties to these coalition talks have made their intentions known even before getting into the negotiation. So now that makes it very difficult now for them to have an agreement because their positions are publicly known.
And
now when
they don't want to back down.
And they don't want to back down. So that makes it very, very difficult for them to have an agreement. And the fact that there are parallel groups trying to initiate coalition talks, that also shows the fragmentation of the opposition.
So when you look at it, the historical lesson is actually clear. In 2016, United Opposition actually removed an entrenched president. So in 2021, a divided opposition led to the election of President Barrow. So the arithmetic hasn't changed. It's the personalities that have changed. And now looking at it now as a build-up to October, when nominations will be opening and all. So would they have their different personalities, they have their different personal aspirations. Are they ready to actually put their differences or personal aspirations aside to come together or not? And also the question, that aspect of that 2026 elections was a litmus test to see whether a coalition could actually work. But now, taking cue from what existed, most of them are actually fearful as to what could happen, whether it would not turn, it wouldn't be the same things that would happen in 2026 that could repeat itself again. And the aspect of now, who leads the coalition?
Because the problem for me is like, I think that's why we really need these constitutional reforms. We are in a country where it's like winner takes all. We can be in a coalition, Mr. Mboch wins or I wins, and ultimately I can take all. I can kick out all my coalition partners in the government and nothing will happen. But if we are guaranteed that, okay, if you go into a government as a coalition, you dare not just wake up and say, Mr. Ade, you're out of the government. Once you do that, then it means the government has failed and we have to go back to election. So I think these are some of the things that we also need to consider. And maybe, like you said, because of past experience, some people are also not very much comfortable with the coalition. Like that trust, that trust is an issue.
One interesting thing the opposition should take cue of is that a recent separatist findings shows that majority of Gambians favored an opposition coalition. So that maybe should also be a motivating factor to them, to see if they could.
But let's move it slightly on. In the coalition talks, I'm hearing two sort of systems: candidate-led, party-led. How do you read that? What's going on there?
You will always have that kind of push and pull, to use the phrase that we use here in the Gambia, because it's kind of competing things. Party X will say, we're the biggest party.
Yes.
And candidate Y will say, I'm the biggest personality. And because deep down, they know that personality politics is what prevails. It's not their manifesto. How many of the manifestos are translated into all our local languages? Almost none of them.
None.
Some of them have recently said that they're going to start doing that.
Yeah, in fact, the NPP1 it has it online.
That's
they have a website where you can listen to all the manifestos.
I wasn't going to name them, but they've said that. But you're right. And so, they know that, if it's about a battle of ideas, then, you need to do that. But, when it comes to coalitions, a lot of the parties, if you look at them, look at all the parties that we have. Take away the person who's the leader of that party. And if somebody were to say to you, do you know what that party stands for? How many of us can actually name and say what that party stands for? It is so bound up in the personalities of almost all the parties and their leaders. The leader is almost the embodiment of the party, and without him, it's mainly him, you can't see the party functioning or even surviving in some instances.
Exactly. So what is the likelihood of most of those parties surviving if the person, the individual is no more there?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
In my recent interview with a senior NPP member, he said they support President Barrow's third term bid because they felt he is the only person to lead the party. So that connects to, the personalities. Beyond the personalities, most people could not recognize what the
say that
party
because they don't want to offend the person who is the leader of the party. And if they don't say that, they'll be seen as being disloyal.
Yes.
So many people will say that even if they don't think it. So I always take that with a pinch of salt.
And for me, Mr. Mboch, regarding this coalition talks, let no one fool you. Egos aside, even in a country where an incumbent is very unpopular, it's always difficult to remove
to unseat.
And in the case of the Gambia, there is no single party, one party that can stand and say, okay, I can remove the incumbent. Remember, the NPP is also into alliance with other parties. So make no mistake to think, okay, because you are popular on social media, what fools us is that what we see on social media and what is on the ground are completely different.
I think that's
and that people need to understand. You can have few individual loudmouths like me on social media saying, oh, Mr. X, and you think you are there. But on the ground, you go to my village, you're thinking differently. So I think they really need to face the reality. Coalition is a must if they really want to remove the government. And even with the coalition, it's not going to be as easy as they might think.
And interestingly,
and
most of
put
them...
it in with
Yeah.
Dr. Aissatou Toure,
Yeah.
South Korean independent.
That's
We
an
have an
interesting
independent
addition.
there. So that's
Yeah,
it. So how
that's
does, you know, how inclusion here, what kind of picture emerges?
Yeah, we
What
had-
chance for coalition politics? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah. We had a discussion today as we were leaving this morning. Unfortunately, we didn't have it on the program.
Okay.
And the discussion was about, you know, what about a female candidate? And we all agreed that if it was somebody who was strong enough to appeal and grab the sort of attention of the voters, then why not? You know, but that is a difficult task.
Yeah. And I said, talking about Dr. Aissatou Toure, this was someone that was part of the government.
Yeah.
Yes,
quite.
and looking at everything that existed and some of the things that she said, it's actually some of the, those are some of the things haunting her today, because that is the question. Why do you want people to vote for you when you are already part of the government that brought us to the situation that we are in today?
But she could be our best bet for our first female president too.
Well, again, are we really ready for it
For me, the
at the
good thing
moment?
is that
That's a big
we are seeing
question.
women
Yes.
coming in, trying to express their interest
Yeah.
for the presidency, which is good.
Yeah,
It's quite
quite.
encouraging.
Quite.
Yes, so I mean, I think for me it's
I
good.
think already we have 2 female candidates, is it?
That's it.
Already.
Not
So
confirmed.
women's
Not confirmed.
As
Not
Not confirmed, yes.
Yeah.
But
So
we have 2 female candidates who
Potential.
Of course,
express interest
Yeah.
to contest the election.
No, in fact, there are more than 2 because we have 2 former vice presidents.
That's right.
Yeah, I said,
You have Marisok there.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
Oh, Marisok is
We are
still in
not
the fray. Yeah.
So the space is open.
It's open.
Oh,
It's open,
for women.
Yeah.
So very quickly, fragmentation, would it suit the incumbent or hurt him?
It will suit the incumbent, I think, because it weakens and it dissipates the opposition. As you know, earlier you used the word egos, and I think that it will be kind of egotism or egoism that will defeat. Because if you can't bury your ego and say, in the interest of the greater victory, I'm willing to go into a coalition. I'm not insisting that I have to be at the head of it, unless all the people who are talking agree to do that. You're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and
it
interesting.
would be an impossibility for any of the ones that we identified as being the leaders to defeat the incumbent.
And one of the things that they've been using lately, it's more like we are engaged in talks. But you've not seen here anywhere that they said, oh, we've actually identified or agreed on a candidate, which are actually 2 different things.
Yeah.
In fact, I was searching because Doi put out a press release today.
Yeah,
That's right. regarding
PPP has
coalition.
also, you know,
Yeah.
expressed their interest to join with
UDP.
Yeah,
UDP. But
I've seen that they've signed something today.
no, I think they just met. I think they're going to sign something.
okay.
But the fact is that they're running out of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think they signed it today.
Okay, they signed.
They
it.
signed
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Okay. But it's about timing now. They're running out of time. Where in July, election is in the next 4 months or 5 months. By now, they should have known who their flag bearer is.
Yeah, that's
By
right.
now, they
That's
should have
right,
been
because that's the
sharing.
person you have to sell to the
Exactly.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you need to have your own shadow
Yeah,
cabinet.
yeah,
People
yeah.
should know, if
That's
we
it.
win this, our
This
cabinet
one.
is
Yeah.
what we are going to
Yeah.
do.
And
But
you
that's
know,
not
that
happening now.
actually is very important, because that actually adds some aspects of trust.
Exactly.
And the citizens will eventually know, yes, if this comes, probably we'll have hope that we can go with them. But now they have actually put everybody at the tight corner. Everybody is waiting to see who is going to
be
be.
honest with you,
whether
don't
it
be
will work or
surprised before even 2 months of the election, you see some of this opposition joining the incumbent.
Yeah.
That's a possibility, like we had in
big
20 in the past election. We had
With the hope that if he wins, I can get a position.
position. Yeah.
We've come to the end. I think we made a decent job of sort of mapping the moment. We did a bit of the economy, youth, migration, development, and all the rest of it. So now, before we close, I will ask all of you, what's the single issue you think that's going to be likely determine the outcome of this election? Do we have anything like that? Are there anything called voter issues? You see, when you see in other democracies, you talk about voter issues.
About whether it will
it's the
deter-
economy in the
Well,
US. They
that
said
is-
it's the economy stupid. That was the US. I'm not sure
that's right.
whether that is the same.
Because that's why I pause. I think that's why all of us pause, because
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single issue in that sense in the Gambia. You know, cost of living and the price of this will always be there for whomever is the person in power.
For me,
So yeah.
if you ask me, I'll give you two. Many will appreciate the infrastructural development, the roads, the electricity. On the other hand, cost of living.
Yeah.
These two are
I
going to
think the
determine
infrastructure would
Yeah.
definitely
roads,
be
electricity,
a big one.
especially for the incumbent. That's something that they're really going to use
Yes.
for campaign. And then opposition, cost of living, of course, they might say corruption here and there. Those two key things.
Yeah, I mean,
on the opposition.
I agree. I mean, I was going to throw a bit of a curveball and say anybody who's watching, whether you're the politician or you're the person who might vote for the politician, I wrote down 6 things that I think they're quite quick. And so to the person who's seeking my vote, I said, what are your top priorities for your first 100 days? Okay, tell me. The promises you've made to me, how are you going to finance them? I need to know. You know, these are quite, you've said you'll create jobs. How? It's a simple question. But we need to ask them. Democratic institutions, they're people are beginning to lose trust in them. How are you going to strengthen those? And if there are outcomes of yours that are measurable by the end of your term, what would those be? What would you say at the end of your first term? How would we judge you? Yes? And then finally, supposing you don't deliver, how can we hold you accountable? Short of voting you out.
Yeah.
And, you know, those things, I think any prospective voter should ask of the person who's seeking your vote. If they can answer that to your satisfaction, give them your vote.
That's it. I wonder, do you have your list?
So for me, when it comes to the single issue, I'll still go back to the aspect of the coalition arithmetic. For me, that's still my thing. Whether the opposition can unite around a single candidate, or so to say, credible enough to consolidate the non-NPP vote. But again, when you look at it in the other aspect, you have underlying issues, as Ali mentioned, the economy, constitutional reform, youth migration, and all of these things. These are still issues that needs to be addressed.
So very quickly, when we talk about coalition, are we actually saying, without saying it, that actually the only thing they have in common is not ideology or policy, but the person they're trying to get rid of?
Yeah.
They all want to remove.
Is that the only thing that they have in common?
Yeah, that's
and is
that's
that
the
part
only
of the
thing.
problem?
That's the only.
And is that part of the problem? Yeah.
That's it. But do you think that should they manage to come together, that will be a threat to the incumbent?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If they manage to come together,
That would.
but with the current trend that we're seeing, I'm not foreseeing all the opposition coming together.
Yeah.
No.
But what Mr. Mboji is saying, supposing they do.
So
Yes.
it would be.
Suppose they do, yes, they stand a chance. But like I said,
Yeah.
also, we
They
need to
like the
understand
votes.
the NPP is not also a standalone party.
It's a
They are
coalition.
also
in itself.
coalition with
And
other
because
parties
many
as well.
times you've used the phrase NPP-led
Grand coalition.
coalition.
Yeah,
And also, you know,
the
they have
Grand
all the
Alliance.
resources at their disposal
quite.
as an incumbent.
Yeah,
So
quite.
That's
even
it.
with that, it's not going to be.
But
But a unite
if there's just
opposition
fragmentation,
still
like you
will
mentioned.
pose a big threat to the government.
Based on
A
what?
united opposition.
A united.
A united
united.
opposition.
Okay, right.
Yeah, we will pose
Yeah,
a threat to the government.
Yeah.
You know, at some point.
Yeah.
You know, but the sooner the opposition parties understand that it is not about what they want at the negotiation table, but it is about having a compromise, then the easier they would get a candidate.
But also,
But
how
isn't that the issue?
Yeah.
Because we know that in democratic politics, we say it all the time, size matters.
Yes. And that's actually some of the things being used by most people. We have a bigger number, so
In fact,
you actually
I
have
was
to
coming to
lead.
that. Yes, you have so many parties. They can all come together. But most of these parties, how serious are they really, Mr. Mboji? They are more like briefcase parties. Maybe you only know the party leader. They don't even have proper structures across the regions.
So this
So
is
they
the
want to
point.
lean onto someone to get access into government and to say, yes, I contribute.
But isn't this the key?
Exactly.
So one is not necessarily looking for any kind of coalition. You want the consequential members to form a coalition, isn't it?
Exactly.
What chance of that?
That's it. And I think we said because of competing sort of issues and aspirations, they're making it very difficult for themselves.
Yeah.
When people have come out, as Ibrahim has said, and made these bold public statements,
Yeah.
we want this, we want
Yeah.
that, how do you then back down without looking weak, as it were? You could always say, oh, I backed down in the greater good, for the greater good of the Gambia. Whether people will believe that or not, or just think, oh, you're an opportunist, that is something to be, but yes, that has to happen if they have any chance. It's not to say that they will definitely win, but to give them the best chance of winning.
Well,
that is what they
that's
have to
the
do.
best chance.
Because there's no
remains
guarantee.
hanging.
Yeah, in 2021, a funny scenario happened. They struggled during the build-up to the election
Yes.
to come together.
Yes.
A day after the announcement of the results, they came together as one and hold a joint press conference to denounce the results. You know, which in a certain way was so funny to me. That if you know you would have united, why not unite
Before
the
election?
elections,
You
not
know,
after
why are
the
you
elections?
uniting after the
After
election?
elections.
You know, so
Yeah,
that
I
doesn't
think for
sound
me,
logical to
the whole issue is about trust.
Yes, that aspect of trust.
It's
Yeah.
about trust, and like you said, I mean, it's not about what they are going. It's more about who's going to lead.
Because people have been burned before
Yeah.
in coalition.
Yeah.
Promises were made
and nothing
before
fulfilled.
and not lived up to. And that is fresh in the memories of some of the people who are now asking to go into coalition with other people. They know what happened to them the last time they did that. They don't want to go through that again. And so that is kind of making them hold back somewhat.
The signs are all there. It's all clear for people to see.
Yeah, the signs are there, but I mean, for me, we have to say it as it is. We just have to speak the facts, yeah? Like you said, politics is about numbers, Mr. Bush. I mean, if you have the numbers, and then I'm just perhaps coming with maybe 10 people, and I expect Mr. to say, okay, I do lead. After maybe you have spent years with your political party, maybe within the party, I'm not saying, okay, that particular individual should lead or whatsoever, but to come into a coalition and you expect to lead the biggest party, that sometimes is a problem. And that's where the push and pull is right now.
That's where the push is.
And that's the bottom line.
And sometimes what you throw to these other junior partners is a simple one. You say to them, we as a party have an office in every district in this country. Do you? You can't even answer that question. And yet you want to lead?
Do you have any National Assembly member?
You
Do you
know,
have any councillor?
This is it.
You don't even have any.
You know, so those are the simple questions that you ask to say, look, this is my trump card. You know, we've got the biggest in terms of National Assembly members. We've got an office in every district or region in the country. You know, what have you got? What are you bringing besides, you know, social media noise? You know, and so, yeah, I mean, those are the sorts of debates that we've been hearing.
And the fact that, you know, is the winner takes all. Imagine I back you, you come in, you win, and then you kick me
get
out.
rid of me.
And then, you know, some people, there's a fear because they have gone through it, so they are very careful.
As I said, you know, it's fresh in their memories.
I think there would be so many things for us to say in our subsequent programs, because I think there are so many things that I wanted to touch, especially the aspect of having a larger group, a larger number, but still a smaller number wanting to lead. But there are still so many questions hanging that we'll actually get to those things.
Sure.
Oh no, we've got many weeks ahead of us.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm coming to the end. Keep on shouting in my ear.
Wind it up.
The electorate. I think we have to say something about this. How many times have we complained? Oh, our politicians, they have sort of ideology-free kind of politics. That's what they want to give us. But PDOIS. Everybody will say, well, look at Halifa Saleh. Has come with an ideology. So, really, for democracy to work, you need a certain kind of electorate, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how much of what we are would actually prevent the emergence of an ideology-led politics?
I think education has a lot to do with it, where you can read and interrogate the ideas that they're bringing to you. But somebody who isn't even educated could still ask these difficult questions, really. But a lot of them don't even bother with that. They just say, you know, and they go for the lowest common denominator by saying, you know, I'm from this ethnic group, or I'm from this village or this town or this region, vote for me. They don't even bother going into what their policies are. And that's what they try and lean on.
That's if they have one. Most of them
they don't have policies,
you know, and that sadly is where we find ourselves. And so the electorate, people kind of they talk down to them, and the only time they come and show you they care is when they want your vote.
Yeah.
And we have to get away from that. And the only way we're going to get away from that is if the electorate start asking difficult questions every time somebody comes and says, I want your vote.
So this is really what my point is.
Yeah.
Is it that we've got the kind of politics we have because of our norms?
Yes.
Should we challenge that? Maybe there's a point that we need to be addressing as well, don't we?
Because that's what we are meant to believe, that politics is how you do it. It's more about organizing rallies, people eating benachins, dancing, and that's it. That's what people enjoy. Organize rallies, bring musicians.
They go for the vibes.
Because
ambience.
it's not about ideas.
So
in the Gambia, it's about sentiments and the atmosphere that you create to send those sentiments.
So when politicians do that,
yes.
they're being rational.
Because they know it works.
They're using for the easiest way to get
They know
how we think, they know what we want.
they play with the minds of the electorate, so they use the easiest way to get to them.
At
And most of
PDO
this
Australia,
opposition or other parties will actually, most of these other oppositions will actually easily lean on the gaps of the incumbent to use that on people. Let's say, for example, I'll say for somebody like me from Bakote, so to say, we don't have water. So once, probably not understanding issues, once a candidate comes to me and says, I'll actually solve the water crisis, or government doesn't even care about the water situation in your area. So I'm going through that struggle. You can easily win my heart because of that. Or going to my grandmother in Dongoraba, so to say. Yes, all of those things.
Ask
we use.
the question. How
are you going to do it?
Yes.
Exactly.
But are we even
It's a
ready to
simple
ask
one.
those questions?
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
we
it.
are
Are we ready to ask that question?
Yeah, but generally, we don't believe in ideas and principles, you know. So that is why you could hear. No, I mean the general electorate did not believe in ideas and principles. That is why you could say, I am UDP, but today I'm going to NPP. Tomorrow I'm going to NPP, or I am NPP. Next day I am going to UDP. So we switch between parties, you know, but we don't have clear ideas and ideologies that we believe in to say, okay, if I am going to vote for party X, you know, the ideas or the ideology of that party should at least be similar to what I hold as an believe as an electorate before I vote for
I
them.
think the other thing also is also more about we believe in what we see. And that's why ahead of the elections, the political parties must be very careful in their messaging. Their messaging must be tailored to the right people. For example, if you go to maybe Kabada, for example, they have never seen Taru, and today they are saying it. You can't go to Kabada and start telling them about roads, or these roads are not important. Maybe that is their priority. That's what they want. Maybe someone who lives in Banjul might prefer something else. So our priorities differ. Our developments need differ. So once you get what you want, you don't care about someone telling you about GDP.
You just
like,
said,
what is GDP?
You've just
I
said
have a good road to my village. I have electricity. So what is GDP? I don't get GDP.
This is it. I can give a very quick one. An example. My father contested the only election he contested against a minister, chap called R.G.O. King. And my father went to the village of Newton, named after John Newton, the former slaver who wrote Amazing Grace. And he asked the people, he said, this guy has been your MP for 10 years. Is there anything that you want that he has not given you? Simple question. And they said, you know what? We are a fishing village, and this man has never bought a single boat for us. And my father said, okay, how many of the men here are fishermen? And they said 30. He went out and bought 30 boats. He trounced him in the election. Asked them what they want.
And I think we also fall short of those things. So what the people need and what you provided for them actually don't match. You can't give me electricity whilst my need is actually water. So at the end of the day, it doesn't even match.
Absolutely. Now we've come to the very, very end. So that is really our starting point for the road ahead, a framework for understanding issues, examining the choices, and listening carefully to everyone who seeks the trust of Gambian voters between now and polling day. So, viewers, that's what we promise you'll have from Aissatou Keita, President of the GPU, and on her right, Adi Darami, and here on my left, Aliou Cissé, and Aliou Cissé's left, Ibrahima Dabo. We've come to the end. Thank you very much. Join us in the weeks ahead and months ahead until polling day, when we'll be interrogating people on issues that they need to be interrogated on from all of us on the panel. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.